Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the show. Here's Feel the Force, and today my special guest is Stu Kaufman. Now, the universe brought me to his YouTube channel by some miracle. I was led to watch a video on sacred geometry, and his video series, Improving Your Life Through Knowledge, is very powerful, profound, impactful. I'll post a link to it in the description below. Apart from that, he's very into health, natural health, and knows a lot of esoteric things, let's say. So without further ado, let's admit Stuart. Okay, everyone, we have Stu Kaufman. Is that short for Stuart, or is it?
Stuart, yes, a fine
fantastic.
English name for sure, but please call me Stu or Stewie.
Fantastic.
The only people who call me Stuart are my mom and dad when they're mad at me.
Stuart. Fantastic. Or Stewie from family.
But I think it's the same for a lot of people. When you hear your full name, you know you've done something wrong.
Absolutely. So then, at the end of this video, well, in the description, I shall relay Stu's YouTube channel in the description. It's full of goodies. The former half of the channel includes his Improving Your Life Through Knowledge mini-series. And he also goes into self-healing, meditation, and something extremely interesting called, I don't know how I can pronounce it, orthomolecular naturopathy. Is that right?
Naturopathy. Yeah, close enough.
Naturopathy. So I will be asking you some questions on that as well. We just had a very interesting chap the other night called Harry, and he's a holistic health practitioner himself, but not, I mean, it doesn't sound as detailed and elaborate as orthomolecular naturopathy. I did watch that video. That was absolutely fascinating. That was naturopathy. That was absolutely fascinating.
Or naturopath. You can shorten it to say
natural. Yeah, absolutely. So, Stu, to begin with, I was fascinated by your presentation on sacred geometry and how it applies to the structure of the universe itself. And you mentioned in the video how it was a bit scary for you initially to enter into that world of greater knowledge. It's kind of like the universe unlocking its secrets and realizing that the universe is also inside of man, of you. And looking at the sacred geometrical patterns, including the flower of life and the Vesica Pisces, the womb, through which all life comes out of, but also how we see things with the, the eyes. I just thought that was incredibly beautiful, and it makes one recognize how beautiful and perfect the universe is in the grand scheme of things at a sort of higher level, but also at the micro level as well.
Oh, it's very poetic. Yes.
So yes, I would just want to know how well, the universe brought you to sacred geometry, if you wanted to elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, sure.
Mm.
It was a book, a very well-known book by a man called Machiavelli, and the
Mm.
book is called The Prince.
Ah, yes.
And this is written back, I think, in the 1600s. I can't remember, but it's a book that was written for kings and queens on how to rule the masses. And even when you hear the word Machiavellian, it's become a verb for clandestine subterfuge type techniques, right? So these are ways that the rulers, our masters, for the lack of a better term, can organize ways to rule us, right? And so I went down that rabbit hole and was pretty, startled by how evolved it came. So they've been doing these techniques and ruling us through feudalism and other techniques, just from a 30,000 foot level. There's, obviously communism, monarchy, socialism, you name it. There's many different ways to govern. And it just was an eye-opening experience because I thought that everybody was on the same level, that we just kind of wanted to all get along and kumbaya. But there
Mm.
are, the bankers out there and the monarchs out there that want to be the ruling class, and they have an agenda, and they want to get us to all kind of walk a single file down this orderly path to do their bidding. And with that research came a lot of esoteric knowledge, because in a lot of these ruling class societies, you have a lot of secret societies that go into a lot of different occult type practices, tree of life, Kabbalah, Illuminati, Freemasonry. And then pulling back the layers of those onions, I realized that a lot of these people are quite intelligent. There's a lot of mathematics that go along with this, spatial relations, even the fact that it's called Freemasons. A lot of these guys were Masons and built a lot of our churches and temples and cathedrals. And it means some of these structures still stand today. And
Yes.
so through this research, it made me realize not only is it this macrocosm, is it this what has built the universe, but it's also goes down to the smallest thing, to the atom, to the molecule. And one of the most startling realizations, and I might have had a few drinks the night I had this realization, but an atom doesn't look much different than the solar system. And I thought, oh my
Mm.
God, the solar system is a gigantic atom,
Mm. That's so beautiful. Yeah, it's like absolutely. Alcohol can be quite spiritual in certain contexts. Um, it's like we're like holographic fractals of like the one source, and it's almost like that hermetic principle, as above, so below. And
Yeah, and I don't think it's, hermetic, means kind of secretive. And I don't think it's so much of I think a lot of physicists and scientists and doctors and mathematics, we realize that, as above is the same as below. I think it's one of Newton's universal laws is, it's the same throughout. It's the same as far away in space as it is inside of our bodies, and we have the same little universes. And one of the first analogies that made me understand, because again, it's very subtle, And even though I like to think I'm an expert, I'm still learning. But I remember the first time somebody was able to kind of give me a sample of what this kind of above below thing meant. And they said, you know, take an equilateral triangle and then divide that up with as many equilateral triangles you can fit in there, and then divide each one of those equilateral triangles with as many equilateral triangles that will fit inside each one of those, and that will go on forever.
Wow. Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's just this such a beautiful poetic structure. So they're saying, okay, so on the outside is this big equilateral triangle, but at the bottom, infinitely below it, is the same triangle. Right? So
Yes.
as above, so below. So that was one of those kind of dawning moments. It's like, oh, okay, I need to know how this works, you know? And so people don't realize, not only does it go out 2-dimensionally, and it goes out 3-dimensionally, and then it also goes out 4-dimensionally, which is the time aspect, right? It's also spinning. And that's the thing. A lot of mathematicians, a lot of physicists are just now starting to. I can't think of what his name is. Nassim Harriman, I think, who's just now a brilliant mind, talking about. You know, we forget to talk about how, and that's why one of the best things to look at when you want to talk about sacred geometry are the conch shells out there, or the pine cones, because we see this 3-dimensional shape, and we have to realize when this thing is growing in the sunlight, in the universe, not only is time taking it, but so is the turn of the universe is taking it. Yes. So as it spaces out in this Fibonacci sequence, you know, 1, 2, help me out, 3, 5, I forget 5, the Fibonacci
8,
sequence.
13, 28.
Right. So, you know, and that's kind of how the branch is out. So it's branching out in that way, but it's also spinning. So people get confused when they try to look at, you know, the golden rectangle and the golden spiral, and they can't see it. And they're like, why can't I see this? Is because it's hard for our eyes and our mind to see the rotation of it. And once you start to see the spin, then your mind will really be blown.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. And it begs one to question, who is or what is the designer behind this? And, you know, of course, the Freemasons have the great architect of the universe, so-called, but it kind of makes you wonder, is there an intelligent God who designed this, you know?
Yeah, that'll make your mind implode, right? And that's one of my favorite symbols is, you know, the Freemason, you know, they have the big G,
Yes.
which some say stands for God, but other people say stands for geometry. And then it's, you know, the logo is so brilliant because you have the compass that makes up circles and degrees, and then you have the carpenter square that makes up all the straight lines. So you have one machine that makes the radiuses, and then you have the other that makes the straight lines, right? So you have straight lines and curves, and then there's also the you know, the metaphysical esoteric concept there that curves are female and straight lines are male, right? And even numbers are female and odd numbers are male. So I mean, it's funny how it all kind of works together, like the Star of David. When you see the Star of David in 2-dimension, the triangle going up through the Star of David is the phallic symbol, and that's the male, and the one coming down on it is the chalice that holds the baby or holds the seed. But then also when you make it a 3D object, it becomes the Merkaba, and the Merkaba is the time travel. I honestly think recently this has come to me. I think this is the geometric shape that God travels through the universes in. This is the most perfect container, and it is the oldest symbol. Well, I shouldn't say the oldest symbol, but one of the most relied on symbols to express spirituality, right? The Star of David or the Merkaba. And I think this geometric shape somehow comes through the Vesica Pisces, which you have a lot of portals. You have a lot of, I think this is where the vortex is created in this Vesica Pisces, inside the flower of life or the fruit of life. You know, or the tree of life. There's many places you can find the Vesica Pisces, and that's how a lot of this information is getting through to us.
That's amazing. It reminds me of a book I read by Drunvalo Melchizedek, called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And it goes precisely into what you've just described and how that's all interconnected with, the divine and masculine and feminine principles of the blade and chalice. Yeah, there's a lot of dots that are connecting here. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's the same with the yin and yang, right? There's
Mm.
the side of the mountain that the sun shines on, and there's the side that doesn't. So there's a warm side and a cold side. There's a side that has all the charm and the wonderment, and then there's the other side that has the sorrow and the pain, right? And you need suffering, right, to understand the wonder and the privilege and the honor. So I mean, it all really fits together nicely. And the more you open your eyes and look for these things, the more you see them. And even though I'm trying to think, is it Let's Tao, or I'm trying to think who's said this saying, but some new beginnings are disguised by very painful endings.
Ooh, yes.
And that, and I don't want to say I'm a Buddhist. I'm really not anything. I don't like to categorize myself, but I do think, certainly according to Robert Sheldrake, the Morphic resonance guy, is that, we continue when we die. It's a very painful process. I think on the other side of death is birth. And I do think there's a new beginning right after that, right? Which I think you go through the Vesica Pisces to get through that ending. And it's just a very painful metamorphosis. And then you push through to the other side, and all of a sudden you're this brand new shiny nickel.
Yes.
Ready to do it all over again, right? Tabula rasa.
Absolutely. That is so profound. That is really profound.
Yeah, and I'm trying to stay easy peasy here. So I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yes, and well, I mean, the universe brought me an image of essentially, well, before I came to your video on sacred geometry, the just going through this tube, that life we're just going through this tube, or this womb-like structure, and it's like a process. It's a process that we all move through.
yeah, I mean, you look at, and going back to the G in the Freemason symbol, which can either mean God or what's the word, Euclidean geometry. When you look at God as an acronym, and the first time I heard this, I was also blown away, is G is for generating, O is for operating, and D is for death or decaying, right? So it's the three phases of existence.
That's profound. That's amazing. It's similar to Hindu cosmology. You have Brahman, the creator, Vishnu, the sustainer, and Shiva, the destroyer. It's
Exactly. Exactly.
Tripartite. God, is so fascinating. That's incredible. Wow. So generator, operator, and wow.
And decay or death, right? There are many words you can put in there that, I mean, it's the same thing. I'm a big fan of astrotheology, and one of my favorite little play on words is the autumn equinox, right? And equinox means even night to day, right? So you have 12 hours a day and 12 hours a night.
Yes.
And in the zodiac, the way we describe that time of year is with Libra, right? Who is also the icon is the scale of justice, right? And what's so fascinating is how you see things kind of repeat themselves. Is everything that has to do with balance and equal has the word Libra in it, right? Equilibrium, calibrate, liberate, right? So it's funny how we've passed, we don't even know it, but through this primordial evolutionary behavior pattern, we bring the knowledge with us. And this is kind of what Robert Sheldrake talks about in his morphic resonance concept. And he's so brilliant, it's hard to follow him. And it takes a long time to appreciate what he's saying. But that's kind of what he's saying is this information has memory, and it just automatically comes down with us by this natural order, right? The same when we say something as simple as what hour is it, right? If you transpose R and U, you get Horus. Horus is the sun god,
The sun
right?
god.
When you ask, where is Horus in the sky? That's where the sun is, it's the sky. You're asking, what hour is it, right? So, these are the
Wow.
things that we are doing to continue to pass on this memory, this knowledge, this morphic resonance. So and when you start to see these clues and these hints, and because a lot of people have asked me after that sacred geometry video, well, how do you apply it? How do you apply it to life? You start to look for these hints. You start to look for these ways that let you know that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing it at exactly the time you're doing it.
And that provides a lot of relief and, well, anxiety relief for one. Because I think a lot of people kind of run around worrying about, what's my purpose? Am I doing it? Am I doing it right? And constantly questioning themselves and where they're going.
Yeah, it gets scary, and especially at times like these, it really does hurt my feelings. I am certainly an empath, and I'm very compassionate, and we've seen a lot of people get very emotionally stressed out to be in these lockdowns. It's unfortunate. I fortunately have been meditating for many years, so and I've already kind of been an introvert, so it's
Yeah, exactly.
kind of normal for me. But I cannot emphasize enough meditation, and I know we're going to talk a little bit later, but to dieting and fasting and eating right and exercising, because those will go a long way in helping reduce the stress.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. It's interesting that you mention introversion in the midst of these trying times, because obviously as natural introverts, we're like, oh, well, yeah, we're kind of used to this so-called self-isolation. But when it becomes imposed upon one, you kind of want to do the opposite, and it's like, I want to go and meet people and start a riot. I don't know, but
Right. Yeah, I mean, not only are there 9 different applications of intelligence, well, now they're saying there might be 12 different applications of intelligence. There are 9 to 12 different types of personalities. You have people who absolutely have to have community, and they have to have community right now, and those are the people who struggle the most. They get off, they live on the interface of having company.
yes. And do you think that has to do with them avoiding their own inner self, or
I think there's a little salt and pepper of both. I think
yeah.
that, we have to, as introverts, because it sounds like you're owning up that you're also a self-isolator, we have to force ourselves out into the general population as well, because,
Yeah.
some of the greatest thinkers, have the Asperger's, have the OCD. Look at Tesla at the end; he wouldn't leave his hotel room. But these are some of the greatest minds, and these are the people that we have to pick the knowledge from. These are the people who can get us further down the evolution line, for the lack of a better word, to facilitate an easier existence for humanity. I mean, humanity is stifled right now. The people who are in the ruling class right now, I think, are very self-serving, and it's unfortunate, because I do believe they are good people. I just think they were, in the environment that created a very demonic outlook.
Sure. Team Dark.
Yeah. Totally.
To put it in simple terms,
Dark, that's
but
great.
I've always wanted to like have compassion for them, because that's the ultimate goal for, I mean, anyone who's seeks knowledge and enlightenment, is
Well, I want to say, to interject is, for the people who do struggle with depression and anxiety and panic attacks and stuff like that, there's a really good book out there by, I think it's Scott and Peck, Greg Peck, or whatever, The Road Less Traveled.
Ah, yes, yes.
And I mean, you can read that book many, many times. You can get so many things from that book. But he talks about, you can bring darkness to a dark room and all you're going to have is more darkness. But if you bring a candle into that dark room, you'll have a little bit of light. And, that's where, I don't believe in the golden rule. I don't believe do on others as they would have done on you, because some people don't mind having evil done onto them. So they don't mind doing evil to you. So, don't think, the lion's not going to eat you just because you won't eat the lion, kind of thing. Right. But I do believe that you have to show compassion. I think you're right. I do think that there are demonic forces out there, or there is Team Dark, or whatever you were calling it, Team Night, which is hysterical. That it could be. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of influence to get somebody to move a little bit on their ways of thinking. And if we can start to create a little bit of crack in the dam of the people who are our masters, for the lack of a better term, and let them see that there are better ways that we can be operating this planet, we could win.
Absolutely. I've always been a mediator, and after having fought on the side of the light, what I found was reaching sheer exhaustion, trying to prove the other side wrong, and so harmonization of both sides somehow, I think, yeah, it has to be the way forward, and doing so, yeah, practically, finding a way to do that practically as well. Because I was talking with Harry the other night on this show about karma, and how if the masters are intelligent, which they are, surely they would understand how karma works, and that if you hinder or harm someone else, then it's going to come back to them. But from what I'm saying, it's like they defy that sort of karmic law. I don't know if you've had any thoughts about that.
That goes back to, I am very much of and this is not my thing, this is a Carl Sagan thing, also another just brilliant mind. Fortunately, he did not suffer from Asperger's. He loved the limelight, but he talked about the golden rule being, not the best rule, because there are people out there who don't mind having evil done onto them. He believes in what's called the bronze rule, which is the tit for tat. I will push you back just as much as you push me. And that's brilliant. It's like, you don't need to be aggressive, but you have to know that there are aggressive people out there. And in a lot of situations, once the person knows that you're just not going to lay down, they'll move on to the next person because they're looking for that person to lay down. But unfortunately, those people, again, they want that karma to be, and it could be from a bad upbringing. It could be from just bad influence from the dark knights out there, from the Team Dark. They have been told, because you start to instill and indoctrinate people from a very young age, and there have been a lot of these people who have been groomed from 5 years, 6 years old. They know it as gospel. So these people potentially want bad karma back on them, so they don't mind putting out bad karma. So and again, that's really me speaking out of the side of my hat. I really don't know how these people think. It is unfortunate that we are seeing the printing of money and the banks taking over and indoctrinating these third world countries. I mean, not only have they indoctrinated the third world countries, but I mean, I just saw an article today that Italy is borrowing right now 158% to GDP. It's worse than what they owed after World War II.
Wow.
And if you remember, they were in the short end of the stick in that deal. And here's a situation where we don't have a lot of industry to build up, and we're still keeping people at home. So it's a very bad time in our society that we are creating this really irresponsible debt that will at some point potentially justify some kind of reset, and resets usually aren't peaceful, you know. So
Indeed.
it's a setup for some scary times, unfortunately.
Sure, absolutely. Regarding this looming reset, do you feel that it would be right for a critical mass of humanity to simply rise up and resist it? Or is there a more, or does humanity need to go about it in a more strategic manner?
It is a very unfortunate time for humanity because we have created this cathode ray tube, which I found out recently was an invention by somebody who knew Aleister Crowley, and they first made it to try to find ghosts, which is just fascinating, right? They try to look through this tube to see if they can see interdimensionally, which you probably could. I mean, I think Kevin Bacon did some movie about, you know, EMTs or whatever you call it, where you see ghosts in the static, right? Even in Poltergeist, the girl looks at the station that's just all fuzz and snow. But then it became this boob tube, this message, this thing that could send a message, right? And people don't realize, but Team Dark, Team Night, I keep forgetting what you call it, have basically usurped this mass communication tool.
Yes.
And they are slowly but surely, you know, creating their narrative so that they get to whatever their end game might be. And they have these algorithms down so they know exactly how to unfold the message, so it's hard to argue against it. I mean, you know, anything you say that contests whatever the narrative is, you're just a conspiracy theorist, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you know what's your authority on this information. You know, where sometimes it just takes some predicate logic or some common sense to realize, you know, hey, that doesn't make sense, you know. And I wish I could come up with a sample right now, but there have been so many. Well, I mean, one of the funniest samples, and I don't want to get political at all because I'm really a systems guy, but how much of a chump I was because I really couldn't stand George W. Bush, because I mean, the Iraq War was a complete illegal invasion. Just another example of our imperialism attitudes here in America. We're just a bunch of warmongers in a total military industrial complex. But I won't tell you how I feel. But when when Obama came out, he came out with a poster and all it said on it was hope. And it sold me. I was sold. So that's how easy it is. And what's funny is when you talk about the word magic spell, and this is another thing, I think it was Vernon Maxwell who said this. He said, you have to spell it to make it magic. Right? So it's these words that are spelled on a page that get to influence the masses. And sometimes it can be one word.
Absolutely.
So it's, you know, so sorry, that was a very long answer to your question, but I think it would be very, very difficult for La Resistance to create any serious movement. I think The best way to do it, is almost the Gandhi method, where it's just, the Martin Luther King. Oh, and how appropriate! It's Martin Luther King Day here in America.
Yes, yes.
Is to to be a nonviolent, but also, and here's the difference between Gandhi and Martin Luther King in my concept, and it's really not my concept, is not participate.
Yes, yeah.
They have done such a good job here in the United States to get everybody to pick a side. I even had, I was going on I forget what I was doing, but I was with somebody and I talked about, they wanted to know what my position was on something Trump had did or something. I said, well, I'm really apolitical. I'm a systems guy. They were like, well, I think that's really irresponsible that you're not, and I just was like shocked. I didn't even know how to come back to that. I was like, so it's not even, I can't even choose to not get involved,
That's still a choice, isn't it?
yeah, it's a choice. But
Absolutely.
I mean, it's one of those things where, they have done such a good job, Jesse, of you're not allowed to talk about the issue, the system, right? You have to talk about the system as it fits into one of these categories. It's either a conservative issue or it's a liberal issue. And as soon as you categorize yourself in that, somebody can disown you and you can't even talk logic to them anymore. And it is really a crime on humanity. I mean, they did this so eloquently with climate change. Climate change, before Al Gore did The Inconvenient Truth, scientists, experts were heard and people believed them. And as soon as Al Gore, who I believe was set up to make this documentary, did Inconvenient Truth, you were allowed to put it inside the political machine. And then all of a sudden it became a political issue. And now scientists aren't even scientists anymore, right? It's all fake news. So, I mean, it's the number one crime on humanity. The fact that the mass media has been taken over, the fourth estate and all these ways to communicate through these TVs and publications and social media have been taken over so successfully by the political machine.
Absolutely. It's quite amazing what's happening in America right now. Well, obviously, I've been following it very closely. And it's looking like there was genuine fraud that occurred. And I just feel that if it's not exposed in time and if enough people don't wake up, then humanity is kind of going to be fixed in this default, well, for want of a better word, communism.
That's a great word. I think it's a total default. It's a total, and they love it because it's already exactly where they want it to be. It's, it's the slave drive, right? It's back to exactly how they want it. They'll sit there and argue across the aisle. We'll argue amongst ourselves and they'll continue to kick the can down the road and bring their big old paychecks and all their cronyism right to the bank as they continue to create whatever monster they want to create. And I think that monster, is going to be the Terminator. I think we're going to have the Cyberdyne Corporation, the Skynet, and all of a sudden, and I mean, what's his name? Elon Musk. I mean, at least he's gone on his soapbox and talked about this. And I think it's called singularity. Isn't that what it's called when AI finally realizes it doesn't need humans? I mean, that is the road we are going down. And I think there are going to be some horrors before there because it's going to be, we're going to see something. I mean, I can't think of what company it is, but there's a company now that makes robotic soldiers. So
yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're already making these things to destroy us, right? And we're thinking, oh, well, we can always control that. We can, to think we're always one step ahead is foolish.
And it's interesting how in popular culture, well, for at least 30, 40 years, movies have been priming people's psychology with these sci-fi situations, like man against machine with, Terminator, The Matrix, and all this. So it seems like they're trying to desensitize people. So if and when it does come, it won't be as much of a shock.
Right. That's exactly that's the playbook. Right.
So,
You know a lot more than you're letting on, Jesse. Yeah, that's exactly the playbook. That's exactly how
mm,
they're running their playbook is to put things out there 10 years ahead of schedule in a movie, so that when it happens, you'll be like, I've seen this before. So
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
was, and it does. It desensitizes you, and you think, okay, I'm accepting this. This is. I mean, look at all the contagion, pandemic, virus movies that came
Mm,
out,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
almost every year, 20 years before this pandemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. So going back to what the individual can do to move ahead and not just survive day to day, but thrive in this world of um, unease. It's all very precarious. Um, Obviously, health and is of paramount importance given the current monopoly on health now, the so-called medical fascism. Um, some of your videos go into the. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, no, no, cool. Yeah, that was just something else.
You
That
were
was
saying really brilliant things, so I was just letting you
yeah.
go.
Oh yes, orthomolecular. Would you mind just describe?
Naturopathy. It
Yes. Yeah.
must be hard for a British accent, but yeah,
Yeah,
naturopathy.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And you mentioned a mono fruit diet. Um,
Yes.
there,
Yes. Yeah.
and
So
and
how would you like me to lay that on the track? What are you looking for?
so in essence, what really took me aback was how a lot of inflammation in the body um, was actually caused by animal protein that we consume.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and you mentioned cystate, is that right? Cystate?
Citric acid?
Yes.
What are you
Yeah, citric acid. And um, well, essentially, do you think that changing one's diet will help one thrive better in today's world, basically?
I don't think it, Jesse. I know it.
Yeah.
I happen to be living proof.
Okay.
I had a condition called labyrinthitis. It was an
Okay.
inflammation of my inner ear. They say there's no cure for. It created terrible vertigo issues. I couldn't eat without getting nauseous. I mean, as soon as I would wake up, within 5 minutes, I would have these terrible vertigo issues. I had migraines, daily ocular headaches. They were extremely painful. Um, and I was told by the allopathic medicine, which what did you call it? The medical fascism. You have all these great terms. You need to maybe send me some of these terms that you have. But yeah, it's a
Sure.
monopoly. It's a monopoly on medicine. Allopathic medicine is not the right modality for chronic illnesses. But they told me, I saw 5 different specialists. They gave me 5 different diagnoses. But what's just so evil is they all prescribe the same pharmaceutical medicine,
Yes.
antihistamines, antispasmodics, and steroids. And it really wasn't doing much for me. It was kind of just somewhat managing the symptoms, but that's about it. It wasn't even masking anything. And I just got very, very lucky. I had an older lady walk up to me in a health food store because they were just about ready to put me on prednisone, which is a form of steroid. And I knew I didn't want to spend, because I was very young at the time, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life on steroid. I knew that was a death sentence. And she turned me on to this naturopath before I was a naturopath down in Port Charlotte, Florida. His name is Robert Morse. He's a genius of a man. I think he's a modern day Jesus. Um, um, he did an iridology reading, and he was the one who, I mean, he knew some really interesting things. My mom had just died. We talked about adrenal fatigue. My glands were down. And so it was hard for me to fight the inflammation because I was grieving my mother, right? So there are so many things that start to happen to your body. And if you don't start to get ahead of it, it can break you down. And then unfortunately, allopathic doctors, now don't get me wrong, allopathic doctors are good when it comes to acute illnesses. If I'm in a car accident and my arm gets lopped off, I'm gonna go to the emergency room, I want them to sew it back on. But when it comes to inflammation and stuff like that, they don't even talk about nutrition. They don't even talk about diet. But Robert recommended a 40-day red grape mono fruit fast. And at the time I thought, oh my God, this guy is a fruitcake. I am not doing any 40 days on just grapes. But at the time I was desperate. I had really no other outs. I was tired of the allopathic Western doctors telling me I needed to take antispasmodics the rest of my life. So I went to the supermarket here and bought $40, $50 worth of grapes, and the next 40 days was history. I mean, it was one of the most difficult things I had ever done. During that process, because I am such a researcher, I studied everything about the human body and how fasting works on the body. And one thing about fruit is it has fructose in it, especially red grapes. And fructose is the only simple sugar that you don't need insulin to get energy into your cells. So your body can still rest, relax, and repair as it's getting energy. And that is so, so important. And people don't realize that all of our neurotransmitters are created in our belly. And when we release insulin, we release more fight, flight, and freeze neurotransmitters like cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline. Well, actually, adrenaline might be a hormone. I can't think of all the ones, but they're the ones that, and again, this goes back to a primordial evolutionary behavior pattern of when we used to eat in the wild, we'd have to get kind of on high alert because that was when our most vulnerable time was, that a bear could come up or a lion could come up and jump us and eat us while we're eating, right? So it's just over time kind of evolved that we release these worrisome, on alert neurotransmitters as we're eating. But when you're eating fruit, again, I think we are frutivores. I think we evolved as frutivores and somehow became omnivores and then carnivores. But when we're eating fruit, most of the times we're only releasing these simple sugars, which releases a minimal amount of amylase, hardly any to no insulin. So then the body can release more resting, relaxing, repairing neurotransmitters like dopamine, GABA, serotonin. GABA probably the most important because that helps us sleep. And when we're sleeping when we're sleeping properly, we go through this process called lipolysis. Lipolysis is a Greek word that means breaking down of the fat. Fat is where you hold all your toxins. So when you're going through this lipolysis, the toxins get out and then you flush them out through the lymphatic system, right? And there are 5 ways to eliminate these toxins. And you can remember that from the acronym called BULLS, right? So B, bowels, U, urine, L, liver, L, lungs, and S, skin, right? Bowels, urine, lungs, liver, skin. So you want to sweat it out, you want to breathe it out, you want to pee it out, you want to poop it out, right? You want to sweat it out, right? And so when you're able to break down these toxins and sweat them out, you lower the inflammation and the body can heal itself. And I honestly believe, and certainly in my scenario and in the people that I have helped, is once you fix the physical malady, the spiritual, emotional, and psychological malady kind of come into order. Because when you have strength and when you're sleeping well and when you're rested, even though you could be sad your mom died or your girlfriend left you, or, you know, I like to be outside, but I can't because here's this pandemic, you feel good because you have strength and you can exercise and you're like, okay, well, maybe I can't get outside, but maybe I can journal right now. Or maybe I can design my next, lake home if I ever get to buy a lake house or whatever, there's thousands of samples, but yeah, I cannot emphasize enough that if you diet, and you don't necessarily have to become a fruitarian or a vegan, but if you can limit the amount of animal protein
Yes.
that you put in your body, you're going to give your body a break. And let's talk a little bit to that. I don't want to get too long-winded, but the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle, is where we break down our food. So all food turns into sugar, different types of sugar. There's simple sugar and complex sugars, okay? The simple sugars are easier to break down, like I just talked about. So it's easier for the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle to create its mitochondria and its ATP, adenosine triphosphate, right, which is our little batteries. But it only needs a certain amount. It only needs a certain amount of, I think it's 9 essential amino acids that are created from these sugars and stuff to create the ATP so we can continue to function and walk around and heartbeats and breathe and all that stuff, right? But when you have an excess amount of these complex sugars that have more amino acids in it, and then you have all these cattle pushers and milk pushers saying, oh, you need protein, you don't, because it creates up this byproduct. Because the back end of the Krebs cycle, when it already gets enough ATP, creates citric acid. Citric acid is acidity. Acidity is what creates inflammation. Inflammation is what creates all of our diseases and breaks down our immune, makes us immune compromised. And especially in times like these, where we have this unknown virus going around, it puts you at risk. You know, so there couldn't be a better time to change your lifestyle and your diet somewhat if you are struggling during these times with anxiety, depression, being overweight, whatever your malady might be.
That's really incredible. And just out of curiosity, do you offer people consultations, either online or in person?
Yes,
Or,
people are certainly more than welcome to contact me. I mean, if you want to put my email in at the bottom or
sure.
however you want to do it. I have not been as active on my YouTube channel. I even do have a healing Facebook page that I've kind of just let go dormant. I've kind of just been doing my own thing. I've been really getting into meditation and trying to find peace inside my own little universe. You know, it's probably not so little. And that's also another absolute. It's an absolute. Whether you suffer from any type of malady or not, you should spend at least 15 minutes a day on your knees or on your butt meditating to a mantra or to some music or even a guided YouTube video or audio book or whatever, however you got to do it. But I cannot tell you, I've been doing it. So this is year 3, even though I've been on and off meditating for probably 10 years, but now 3 years every day. And it's mind opening. I mean, my consciousness was about this long, was about this wide, you know, right outside of my temples right here before I started meditating. And now that I've been meditating for 3 years, it can't even fit on this screen. I mean, I see things and I hear things and I understand things and I move through this universe at such a different cadence now, just from my ability to breathe, from my ability to be quiet, from my ability to be still. And there are so many benefits to learning to be quiet with yourself. Are you crying yet?
that's really powerful. And as a segue to that, I would recommend people watch the your 10-minute guided meditation on stillness, which is really,
I forgot about that one. Thank you, Jesse. Yes, that's right.
It's really.
Have you done that one?
Yes. Yeah.
Good for you.
It's really profound. Very profound.
I should do more of those too. I apologize to the public and to humanity. I do have a lot of gifts, and I should take more time to share them. And doing guided meditations is one of those things I should probably put some more videos out on.
Yeah. But you know, these are gems. So, I mean, obviously in your own time, but yeah, we all share what we need to share. And yeah, absolutely. So, just to wrap this up, one of your videos has a thumbnail that says pronoia, which is the opposite of paranoia, the belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's a sort of a clarion call for everyone here to really feel into that. And I guess, you know, even, you know, people like me, we got to rewire our brains to not just believe, but also know that the universe does have our back.
It takes time, and
Yeah.
it's you know, it comes in waves. But the more that you condition yourself, the more it becomes this beautiful thing. Because I think it's something like 1.2 trillion to one that you actually become the sperm that impregnates the egg. I mean,
Hmm.
just getting here is a privilege. I mean, you are here to, you know, for some purpose, and
Hmm.
yeah, you might not figure it out in this lifetime, but that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, you know, I believe we get many, many opportunities. And
Mm.
yeah, you know, there's going to be moments of sorrow and moments of anxiety. And, you know, but those are, you know, again, that's the yin and the yang. There's going to be the day that you're on the side of the mountain, that the sun is shining on your cheeks and you're seeing the sun trickle on the ocean below your feet. And it's just this
Mm.
beautiful, feels like a vacation day. And then there's the other day where, you know, you're on the dark side of the mountain and the wind is blowing and the storm is coming in and doesn't feel like you can get a hold of anybody and you feel all alone. But you get through it. You know, you buckle down, and those are character building moments, and those are the times that you need to know that, okay, this is the quiz. This is the quiz that this is the test, this is the exam, you know, of showing, okay, all the accoutrement, all the things that I have done. I have dieted, I have exercised, I have meditated, I've educated myself, I have learned a lot about esoteric and sacred spatial relations in the universe. Here I am stuck in this very adverse scenario. How do I get through it? You know, they say they judge a man by what bothers him, right?
Mm.
Find yourself, and I mean, this is unisex, the same with women. They, you know,
Mm. Mm.
they judge a woman by what bothers her as well. Uh, when you find yourself in these adverse situations,
Mm.
try to be stoic and
Mm.
matter of factly as long as you can before you raise up your hands to God and ask for help. You know, God wants to know that He's given you the tools and you can get through it as cool as a cucumber as you can. Because
Yes.
that's that's the process. The process is, and you know, and even in my own experiences, and I believe me, I've been through some dark days. Uh, there are some real pat on the backs when I have gotten through some low points with style.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because well, certain institutionalized religions tend to uh, make certain people dependent on God and for salvation or something. But yeah, no, I resonate with what you say about how God would want you to be strong and stand on your own 2 feet and be
Right. That's why He gave us self will.
and
Absolutely.
and be godlike, you know, be a mini
Yes, He
version,
built this, right. He built this in His image. Absolutely. Absolutely.
be a mini version of him, her, or you know, whatever.
As above, so below.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So Listen, thank you so much. This has been such a
Well,
profound.
hold on, let's back up before
Yeah,
we go ahead and exit out of here. I do want to talk a little bit about, we were going to talk
yeah,
about
absolutely.
kind of where we're going. And,
Yes, yes, yes. Sorry about that. I
and
was just doing a time check. You
oh,
know,
we're already into an hour?
we're into an hour, but
Oh my goodness.
we're almost an hour.
Okay, well, I will
But
try to
actually,
know.
there's no rush. So in your own time, yes,
Okay.
the future of humanity, and
Yeah, I think this is important for the select few who might
mm,
see this video at some point in their lifetime and it resonates and they've gotten to this point and all of a sudden you're just thanking me. He's like, wait a minute,
yeah,
he
yeah.
didn't tell us where to go.
What do we do
Uh,
now?
no, this email's not working. Uh, is this, with the pandemic, with the borrowing of all this money, it becoming more of a global economy, having to be vaccinated before you can travel, from country to country. They really want to kind of trace us every step we take, every move we make. You see another one of those presets. The Police sung that song early in the 80s just to kind of, let's go ahead and preset everybody. Is it's okay. It really is okay, and you do have to participate to some level. But if you learn and continue to take these baby steps to educate yourself, to look for these nuances on the way that they want to alter our behavior, the way they want to change up certain systems so that it looks like it's for your safety, but it's really for more of their control,
Mm,
then you become more aware. And it's a collective consciousness. If there is a consensus of awareness, then we will see that consciousness shift. There will be that paradigm shift,
mm,
that things will start to pull back the layer of those onion, and we will start to see new rulers and we'll start to see changes because there are so many systems much better than the system that we are in now. To me, this
yes.
is a form of feudalism disguised as democracy with your flavor of your salt and pepper flavoring of socialism and capitalism, right? But really, it's all a bunch of tax farms, and we all have our social security number, and our social security number is basically our stamp on our forehead, and it's like, you owe this much money, and your lifetime, you will produce this much money for the government. Right? And it's simple math, right? It's like they figure out how much can this one citizen produce for us. I mean, people don't realize that, but that's how money is valued by the
Mm,
population of each sovereign nation, right? So if we can look at, and when we are allowed to look at it, but for some reason people won't look at this, when we can look at systems outside of the political machine, when we can learn not to say, oh, you're alt-right or you're a snowflake left, as soon as you try to talk about a system, and you can talk about it for the system logically, then we can start to look at programs that might be more beneficial for humanity. And back to the Roman days, that's why they had the Colosseum and the Colosseum games, is because people wanted to see these games, and you had to have the mob rule, right? You still have mob rule, you still have mob mentality. You have to have consensus.
yeah.
So if the consensus is for better systems, then guess what? Better systems will come.
Mm,
So
yes.
that's should be the behavior and the mindset and the goal, even though it doesn't have to happen overnight, but the baby steps for the people who are watching this video and getting it is try to remove yourself from labels. try to talk about these systems as systems, and remind people once they start saying, oh, well, you're this liberal or you're this socialist. Or, no, I'm not. I'm a systems guy, and I'm just trying to make a system better so it would be easier for us to facilitate our existence on this planet, and not only ours, but our kids and our grandchildren. I mean, that's the one thing that, and I don't want to get too much on my political soapbox here, but they're borrowing so much money. This new administration coming out here in America talking about borrowing 1.9 trillion. We've already borrowed, I think, up to close to 5 trillion for this COVID situation. This is the perfect example of taxation without representation, right? Because you have future generations that aren't even born yet that have to pay this bill. And this is a crime on humanity. It's a crime on humanity that nobody's even talking about. And it really is unfortunate because we are making money valueless. And that is not a sound, sustainable system. So if we start to sniff out things like this, because, I mean, let's look at where the bulk of this money is going to. It's not going to individuals. It's going to cronyism. It's going to these buddies who have lobbied to get the money to go to these corporations, like the Boeings of the world and the cruise lines. And I mean, they're giving these big corporations billions of dollars without any recourse, with complete impunity. And future generations have to pay this bill through their taxes. And people don't realize, but inflation is another form of it's a regressive tax, right? Because your dollar will buy less. So we have to stay cool, right? Continue to look at how they're doing it, and start, because once there's, again, once I can go into a room and start talking about a system, somebody else can talk to me about that system, and I'm not conspiratorial, or I'm not a Republican and you're a Democrat, then we can get somewhere, right?
Exactly.
And that's where we need to go. We need to peel back the labels. And we need to look for the slight little ways that they come at us with these sophism type techniques to make us think something is right, but it's not right. And once you start to sniff those things out, you become more aware, and then you start to realize, okay, I'm not going to be played anymore. And once you start being way ahead of the curve, then you start to lose the anxiety, you start to lose the depression, you start losing the eating disorder, and you start to become a warrior. You become a warrior for humanity. You start realizing, wait a minute, I can be a part of this. I can be a part of this change, and that's when you've won.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, it feels that astrologically we've entered the age of Aquarius, which is a very humanitarian sign. So I feel that there's a new dawning of consciousness, which is more, humanitarian with the capital H.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, we haven't even talked. I mean, there are so many different philosophies out there. The great Bactun from the Indian culture that talks about, we go through this big wheel, this big cycle every 26,200 years, and we are coming out of the Iron Age into the Brass Age to, get back to the Golden Age, where, there are times where we have lived before in complete harmony. So it will happen again. And the sooner that we can, pull back the curtain and expose some of these wrongdoings, the sooner we'll get there.
Absolutely. And as you said, it requires, first and foremost, that consensus of awareness, and people, connecting their, consciousness with each other. Obviously, awareness is kind of, I wouldn't say passive, but it can be applied toward, taking, action as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying action, even though I am saying action. Action is dieting, action is meditating, action is being aware, but do I want you to go out with a stick and go down to, you know, downtown and start breaking stuff? No, that's not my style. You know, my style would be more stop participating completely. You know, that's when we've won. You know, quit letting them play you, quit letting them game you. You know, decide for yourself what you think applies to you and your values and your ideals, and don't be part of the mob. You know, that's when you know. And I mean, I guess I need to be careful there, because it's easy for somebody who's on the spectrum of Asperger's and an introvert to be like, oh, don't go hang out with that crowd, you know, because I love not hanging out with the crowd. You know, some people are wired that way. But, you know, you become aware to know, when are they playing you? Are they playing you? And I mean, this is just my opinion. I don't want people to get their feelings hurt when I say this, because I mean, I have a lot of friends close to me, and even relatives who I know are going to get their feelings hurt when I say this. But I think the whole Black Lives Matter movement was a part of the Democrats' political machine to sway the election, and they did it perfectly. And what's even more coincident is, or obvious, is as soon as the election was over, the news cycle of those protests went to bed. It was over. And I mean, those are the things that I'm saying, pay attention to, become aware of. Why would they just quit covering that stuff like that? The protests didn't stop, but the people covering it did. You know, I mean, Portland was still under siege, you know, so it's still having problems. And even here in Louisville, I mean, people are still downtown and going around and marching, and, you know, but are we making national news headlines? No, we're not. So just you know when you're being gamed, know when you're being played for an agenda that isn't necessarily yours.
Yeah, precisely that. And ironically, I think our dear Martin Luther King would not have approved of Black Lives Matter at all.
Hard to say. I mean,
given the way it's been kind of used, because from what I read, it was actually funded by the CIA or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, we're speculating now.
We're speculating.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say.
Go, you know, and stuff like that. But
I mean, don't get me wrong. It is very unfortunate. I can't think if it was George Blake, or there was another Black gentleman who was killed by the police for not really doing anything wrong. And the police officers there were just recently, a couple weeks back, also acquitted. So none of those people were charged with murder. So the program, the society, the police here in this country do need a new system. Does it need to be defunded? No, that would be bad. That would be anarchy. We don't need anarchy. But do we need a merit system where certain people will get more money for doing better than others? Like, there was a mayor here before our current mayor that wanted officers to walk the beat, because they felt like, and this has been proven to be true, you become more familiar with the people in the community, so the police don't become this scary monster like a machine driving in their car, and they only get out when they're going to give force, right? And down rules. You know, the officer's going to walk the beat, and he's going to ask you how you're doing and how are your kids, and all of a sudden it becomes part of the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Where in America, cops have lost that. It's rare that you see them walking on foot. Even when they're on a horse, it's intimidating. You know, it just looks like this imposing force, right? So there's just this huge disconnect in our country between, what is order, and then what is the force needed to get back to order from disorder.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
Especially for the Black communities, they have been abused for many years here, since day one, and they deserve their day in court. They deserve justice, but they deserve justice for the system of that itself not to be connected to any political agenda. And that's what a lot of these people in the Black Lives movements get lost in, is that, you know, you have these Democrats using it to get recognized, and that's and promote their agenda, and that's when it gets watered down.
Quite. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I apologize to all the people out there. That is just my opinion. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Well, freedom of expression and of speech is of paramount
Right.
importance these
Yes,
days.
I want people to understand, like, I love everybody, and I really, you know, we all have the right to our opinion, and I have, you know, I have some great young minds here in America that have changed my mind, that have influenced me to paradigm shift on certain, and those are my favorite kind of people. My favorite kind of people are the people who can sway me, because I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I don't realize, but you know, I have a friend recently who says I come across as a bully on social media, when just matter of factly responding to people's thoughts and concepts, and so people are afraid to engage me. And you know, it really is disappointing to me, because I want people to engage me, and the ones who have engaged me are the ones who have influenced me. So I mean, we need dialogue, and the more
Absolutely.
dialogue
Yeah.
and the more communication we have, the more we can have this meeting of the minds. You know, we can all,
Yes.
and that's really, I don't know what's going on in Europe right now, but especially in America, we need more unity. We need more harmony. And let me actually kind of jump off there and ask you, if you don't mind, you know, maybe we can transition out of this interview with this last question to you.
Yes.
What is the perspective from the outside looking in at America right now? Do you guys just think we're all a bunch of knuckleheads? What's happening from the outside looking in?
Well, without getting too personal, I was born in America,
Oh,
um, and I moved over here over 10 years ago. But without sounding too biased, it's so clear that that number 45, can we say, has been truly demonized unfairly, and there's a mass media campaign to discredit him, because from my perspective, it seems that the whole agenda is to implement a sort of communist coup d'etat on the entire world. And the only person who's been kind of standing in the way of that has been number 45. But that's my perspective. So not many would agree with that. But
but let
it's
me ask you, if you don't mind, and I mean, you can just kind of give me an age range. So are you in your 20s?
late 20s, yeah.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
which is different here, because the 20 somethings here in the States would have the complete juxtaposition than you. So it's interesting. I mean, is that the consensus of people your age in your area?
No, because there are not many people my age in my area. So
Where are you, if you don't mind me asking?
well, I'm in Cornwall, which is about 5 hours from London.
Oh, okay.
It's quite isolated. Um, so yeah, it's by the sea. It's very, very
That's
peaceful
interesting. Oh,
place.
it's by the water.
Yes, yes,
Are you
yeah.
a fisherman?
No, I swim in the sea. But yeah, I've been following it very, very intently, the whole situation in America, and I just feel that um, it, if something doesn't happen that's good, then it's going to have a knock-on effect or a domino effect on the rest of the world. And the media over here, you know, has been completely in the favor of of um, the
The
apparent,
new administration?
yeah, yeah, and it's just, it feels that number 45 has been really ridiculed and shamed and opposed unnecessarily, and to an unreasonable excess, given the peaceful things he's done during.
Yeah. Let's transition from that and talk about, what about also the pandemic? What is the view from Europe or from London or Cornwall on this whole lockdown scenario?
Well, basically, Europe proper, the continent, they're having protests all over, except here in the UK, because it's like a nation of sheep. To put it
For the lack of a better term, right?
to put it bluntly, and the sort of knee-jerk compliance has been absolutely staggering. I mean, everyone's just obediently masked up, and I mean, fortunately, there are no impositions, like you don't have to. The only places you have to wear one is in public transport and in shops, unless you're exempt. And all you have to do is say you're exempt. Sometimes they ask you, most of the times they don't. Since March, I haven't worn a mask, except when in the beginning, when I thought that there might have been something contagious going around. But apart from that, it's just been a pantomime circus show of compliance in the UK, basically.
Fascinating. And just to help me out with my geography, are there a lot of people in Cornwall?
I'm not sure about the demographics, but
what about the population? Is it a big city?
It's a county, so
okay.
Demographics.
What is the city inside of Cornwall? Is there any kind of city? Help me understand London, or help me understand England.
So London is huge, and England has various shires and counties, which hold quite a number of people. I must educate myself on the demographics of this country, because I've been in my own kind of little world down here.
But I mean, is it, so are you in the country or like in the suburbs? I mean, do they call it suburbs in England? Or?
Yes, so the island, well, the UK is a sort of island. Cornwall is literally the sort of the pinky toe of the country.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So
okay.
It's a bit like the boot of, or the stiletto of Italy, you could say. But
I'm gonna do some research. It's funny because I mean, that's the other thing that's neat, because you guys also, because you have a much smaller population than the United States, right? What is the population of the UK?
These are great questions.
Yeah, that's okay. But I mean, what's fascinating is you guys have what, like 7 parties?
I believe so, yes. So 70 million, 70.
Isn't that crazy? So you guys have a third, probably a fifth of our population.
Yeah.
And you have 7 different political parties. Here we have 300 million and we have 2 parties.
Yes.
I mean, not that it seems like you guys are also stuck in this craziness as well with as many parties. And I think, you just have so many influential masters that, it doesn't matter what party you belong to, they seem to get in there and insidiously take over.
Absolutely.
But we won't get back in on that soapbox. I wanted to ask you about the perspective from that side, and it is kind of interesting. We'll see. I mean, I hope you're wrong, but we'll have to wait for history to kind of show its ugly face and look back on it and see.
Yeah. Yes. without sounding too arrogant, I would say we're on the right side of history. but that should be more of an inner knowing without
That's right.
to flaunt it. But yeah, anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, this has been a really insightful, productive, fun interview. I'm very impressed, Jesse. I hope your platform takes off. It was even kind of a refresher for me. I mean, I'm delighted that I'm still able to put across some of these ideas as eloquently as I can and did. And hopefully somebody or more than somebody, many people get something from this interview.
Absolutely. So all for the expansion of one's knowledge and consciousness, of course. So there we go. So I shall end this recording and then we can continue onward. So
All right,
anyway,
thanks.
folks, thanks so much for joining. So as ever, be free, have fun, and have faith. Till next time.